All right, guys, today we're going to be taking notes on the different types of informational text structures. You're going to see that there's 5 main ones that most authors use. Our essential questions are: what are the main types of text structures, and how can we use a text structure to improve our comprehension? So first off, what do I mean by this word structure? Structure just kind of means the organization of the text. You can think of it as the text skeleton, what the text is being built around. Okay, the first type of text structure that we're going to talk about is called description. And in the description, text structure pretty much does what it's saying. It's describing the topic. And it does that by providing you with details or characteristics or other similar information that helps you understand what the topic is like. So some signals to watch out for: phrases like such as or for example. You could also look to see if the text is filled with a lot of descriptive details that are helping you imagine the topic in some way. And just a random example of something that would use a description text structure would be a report where the writer is describing everything they know about grizzly bears, right? They've got brown fur, they eat salmon and other things that they can scavenge from the land, etc. So description, you're describing. The next type of text structure that we're going to talk about is chronological order or sequence. Sometimes you might refer to it as, or you might seen it referred to as order, but chronological order, and sequence are all pretty much the same thing. It is a structure where basically the text is organized as a set of events, and the events are put in the order that they happened. Some example signal words for this are first, next, then. I'm sure you can think of a lot. Before, after, finally. Those kinds of words are all signal words indicating that the text is using a chronological order. And an example of this would be that video that you guys just watched about the history of tea. It starts off with when tea was discovered in ancient China, and it walks you through a lot of the historical events in the order that the events happened. The third type of text structure that we're going to talk about is a compare and contrast structure. You're probably pretty familiar with this since you've been comparing and contrasting since you were itty bitty. But in a compare and contrast structure, we're looking at how two or more things are similar and or different. Some signal words or phrases to watch for this one are in comparison, by contrast, on the other hand, similarly, etc., etc. There's plenty that we can use to connect two things being similar and two things being different. An example of a compare and contrast text structure would show up in an essay that is showing how Romans and Egyptians were similar and different. The fourth main kind of text structure that we often see in informational texts are cause and effect structures. In these ones, we have something that makes something else happen. It's describing sometimes a chain of events where one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. Some examples of signal words that you could see for this are thus, since, because. And an example of an informational text that would use cause and effect would be some kind of report that's explaining the events that led up to World War II. So these events caused this war, right? The last main type of text structure is a problem and solution structure. In this one, the author will explain some kind of problem to you, but they'll also make sure that they've provided some kind of solutions that can be used to solve the problem. Usually in these types of structures, you'll watch out for words like problem, solution, solve, challenge, etc., words like that. And then an example of a text that might use a problem and solution structure would be a report that's explaining the problem of climate change and possible ways that we could fight that. The last point that I want to make about text structures is that texts often don't just have one text structure. Usually they use a couple that work well together to organize their text. So, for example, in the History of Tea video that we watched yesterday, it was definitely a chronological order piece, right? Because it was giving us the events in history as they happened, but there was also elements of description there where it was describing different things about tea and its history. So those two, description and chronological order, worked together in that video. Your job now is to make sure that you have created questions in the questions column. Remember, you can put vocabulary words there as well. Remember, they're supposed to be like questions you think I might ask on a quiz, right? And then after you've completed your questions, work on creating your summary. In your summary, you're supposed to try to answer the essential questions and or explain what you've learned from the notes in about 3 sentences.